What's up, guys? So today we have a special podcast. It's actually the first sponsored podcast I have, which doesn't change anything about the podcast itself, but as you guys know, I donate to charity for every one of my podcasts. And so talking to Jim here, Retro Fitness, Edgemont Square in Newtown Square, PA, they said that they would be happy to sponsor my podcast and give donations so that I could donate more to the various charities. So I just wanted to announce that today. And today's podcast is actually a bodybuilder from this gym, Paul Kanu. So I hope you guys enjoy it today.
All right, guys. So today we have an in-person podcast with Paul Kanu. What's up, man?
Hey, man. How's it going?
So we just met recently, just started talking. We go to the same gym. Turns out you mentioned, am I the guy from Instagram? And I was like, oh, do you follow me? And you said, I think you follow me. I kind of realized.
That was great.
So Paul actually works out with Mike Israetel, who a lot of you guys know. And he's jacked. You know, hoodie you can see he's built, but I'll definitely post some pictures from his Instagram, and I'll link that as well so you can see this guy's a beast. So what's going on, man?
Not much. Just here on a Sunday, and I'm pretty excited to do this. This seems like it's going to be really fun. Lots of information to give out, which I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah. So you've been lifting for how long now?
So I started lifting in 2010, and I didn't know what I was doing. Of course, like nobody ever does when they first started. So I started lifting in 2010 and basically just kept on going, and I was seeing the progress I was making. I was like, wow, this is really fun. So I kept on doing it. And then in 2013, I did my first competition.
After 3 years.
Yeah, for men's physique.
Yeah.
I didn't do so good.
I mean, you looked pretty good, though. And also, didn't you compete? Did you do NPC?
Yes.
So 3 years into lifting, and you competed in an untested organization and looked pretty good. So I mean, that's pretty good, man.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. I could have learned a bit more about how to prep properly before hopping in.
Right. So,
but it was an interesting experience.
All right, so I mean that's pretty awesome. And then, how many competitions have you done now?
So since 2013, one, and then I did 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. So like 4.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And have you gone pro yet or no?
No, not yet. I was close at one point. I was really close.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen, the progress you've made over that time is pretty insane. Before I even knew you competed, like I saw you and I was like, man, this guy is big. And then like the less clothes that you wore to the gym, the more I was like, damn. So at this point, like how are you thinking you're going to continue to progress? Do you want to put on a lot of weight? Because I know you said that you really don't want to be this like huge mass monster, right? That's not your goal.
Yeah, that's definitely not the goal. I want to be at least 20 to 25 pounds within my stage weight. Okay. Because I just feel like if I go over, like, say, like 30 to 40 pounds, it just makes it a lot harder to cut down. And I do classic. So there's no point for me to, like, be incredibly big in terms of weight.
Right.
And I could just, like, maintain lean gains, like, throughout the year. But this year, I was thinking of competing for nationals, but I might just put it on hold.
Yeah.
And just do 2021.
Yeah, well, that's what's crazy about seeing people in person versus pictures, because you're, roughly how tall are you?
5'7", but I like to round up.
So let's say about 5'7", and 190-ish, you said?
Yeah.
190, lean. I mean, that's big. You get people online who say, like, oh, you should be at least 200 pounds within a few years of lifting. 5'7", 190 lean is big. His muscles are like balloons. So you got to think, like, some of these guys who are competing, I think, at the top level, what's Phil Heath? Like 250 at your height, probably? I mean, just like...
Yeah, just like a ball of mass.
just completely absurd, which I think only a very, very small percentage of people would ever want to be. Or even when you hear, like, physique competitors, you think, oh, these guys are smaller or classic. And it's more just that, like, one, I think they just look more aesthetic, but two... there's so much that goes into being like one of those mass monsters that it's almost not desirable, not just from the look, but from the lifestyle. So, we talked briefly that you did kind of make the decision after, remind me how many years, but to kind of add some supplements that would help, right?
Yeah. So after I competed in 2013 for the first time, I placed so there was like about 30 something people. There was 16th was like the number, and then after that it just doesn't matter anymore. So I was like maybe the 10th, 16th that placed, and I looked at that and I was like, wow, this was really disappointing, and I didn't know how to feel. So I took 2 years from competing, even though that was just my very first competition. I took 2 years, and then I started dabbling with some enhancements here and there. And the gradual change from just those 2 years alone to being able to compete again in like 2016 was a little bit insane. And I will admit, not many people can just go from like 16th place and all the way to like placing first,
right?
Like a bodybuilding competition, just almost winning like overall in a sense. But yeah, so it took me some time to kind of think about the decisions of whether or not I wanted to go that route.
So total, you said it was 3 years you competed. You took another 2 years, and that's when you decided to go the enhanced route.
Because I figured I really love to compete,
yeah,
and I want to win. So for me to be able to win and where I'm competing at, I need to kind of step it up a little.
Right, and I think that's fair. You know, there are some people who say like after 1 year that they're going on something, and I think that's silly. I mean, in the incredibly rare exception that like maybe your parents are both like genetic freak bodybuilders and you 100% know or think you know that you want to do it, you know, like an Arnold Schwarzenegger type of situation where he was like 15 and just like blew up, maybe. But for most people, you know, I'm not like, I have no moral objections to people being enhanced or anything like that, but I think you should give yourself some time, one, to see what you can get out of natural training, two, to learn how to train properly, you know, because if you're enhanced, you're going to gain muscle regardless, but it's not necessarily going to be optimal. You know, you might not put anywhere near as much muscle on if you're doing things right. And thirdly, I think you're going to determine where you kind of lie on the, you know, genetic chart. And so by that, I mean, you were already looking pretty amazing after 3 or 4 years. You know that going the enhanced route, you can, like you said, you're competitive. You can probably do pretty damn well. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, and like you said, not everybody can go from, you know, worse than 16th place to basically winning.
Yeah.
Not everybody can do that. And, you know, for some people, maybe like you, going enhanced is worth it because it's like, hey, this fulfills my competitive drive and I can do well. Somebody else, he might be taking a ton of stuff and still look like crap. And it's like, man, if that's the case, you might want to rethink, you know, what you're doing. So I think what you did makes sense. I think with your drive and everything, it does make sense for what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. It was the best decision of my life.
Yeah, yeah. And the ego boost, that, you know, that's just a side benefit.
Yeah, I didn't really think there was much, to be honest.
No.
It was always just more focused on just like competing,
right?
And it was just all geared towards, hey, I have to be better than what I was 2-3 years ago, and then now it's like every year I just have to be a lot better than what the previous year was, and then just get better and better as I go.
Right. Awesome. So you had just mentioned that you just did a leg workout with Mike Israetel on Thursday. I just kind of want to hear a little bit about that because this is actually for his programs, right?
Yeah. So Mike offered me a chance to basically train me, which that always ends up in a very interesting way. The first time we trained together, we did legs, and this was at City Fitness in Philly. So again, he took me through basically 3 exercises: leg press, Smith machine, squats, and leg curls. That's what we did like a few months ago, and it's also what we did this time around. And so essentially, we warmed up with leg curls for 4 warm-up sets, and then we did 4 working sets. And those working sets were taken towards at least 0 to 1 reps in reserves. And towards like the 4th set, the weight wasn't really like heavy,
right? But
it's the fact that we were just focused so much on like the contraction, the execution, form, technique that makes it a lot more intense. And by the 4th set, my hamstrings were pretty much fried.
Yeah.
And then we got to like leg press, and I was already like basically just about to fall. And his thing with leg press is that you have to go really deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really deep, get that stretch in, and be able to pause at the bottom and then just explode up with the weight. When you do it like that, you don't necessarily need a heavy amount of weight to feel your quads being fully activated. Where most people, when they work out like that, they tend to use like a lot of weight,
right.
A lot, and their leg development is just not there. And simply because of that, they don't really know how to fully engage their quads. But when you do leg press with like slow control reps, pause all the way at the bottom, go as deep as you can, and just be explosive with it, and just take your time with the reps, it hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts because right after that, I was like about to throw up.
There's just something about leg training. I mean, I've done some very tough upper body workouts, and maybe like a back workout, you know, it can get intense, but just with legs, man, it's just like you literally like fear it days beforehand if you're going intense. And I probably mentioned this on the podcast before, but back when I was in high school, like I was, you know, I think when people hear about like new people to training and like these kids training, they're like, oh, they don't know how to train. And I will always say that like I was just one of those stubborn people that really, really pushed themselves at a young age. And I think probably having an athletic background helped that.
Yeah, I think that
but
does.
I got into it, and so I'm like, I don't know, 140 pounds at the time, and I don't know if you know the name Tom Venuto, but he was really big in like the natural bodybuilding world, and he put out Burn the Fat, Feed the Muscle. It was a pretty popular book. So he had this like bulking routine that he submitted to somebody for it was just like an ebook, like when ebooks were actually a thing still, and the workout, which is like not even well programmed in my opinion, but it was breathing sets of squats. So breathing squats are basically, in theory, you take like a 10 rep max. You get to 10 reps and then you just hold it. And then you get another rep and you continue to just hold it on your back until you get to 20, which is just like horrible. I mean, it could take, you know, several minutes to get there. 2 sets of that, followed by a superset of leg press, like 8 to 12 reps, and hack squats, 12 to 15 reps, doing that 3 times. And then leg extensions, and then like it was straight-legged deadlifts. By the time you got to straight-legged deadlifts, it was horrible because now you're bending over, and every time you just want to like throw up. And that was like the first time where a trainer came up to me and like asked if I was okay, because I'm like this 14, 15-year-old kid just lying on the ground like dry heaving, but and like I don't even think I could do that now. I was like back then I was dumb enough to think like this is gonna get me the results, like I'm gonna have like Tom Platt's legs, and now I'm like fuck that. Like it was horrible. So you know, definitely kudos to you to go through Mike's workout, and it's very intense, but I mean I think your legs are crazy, Mike's legs are beastly, you know, there's a reason for it.
Yeah, it's also like when it comes to doing legs, I don't know what it is. I tend to give it a lot more focus than anything else.
Yeah.
Just because I kind of like the soreness and the pain I get from it. And it feels really good. And I'm always just like, okay, wow, it's leg day. I'm excited. Yeah. Like the first few sets, I'm just like,
it's almost like I think bodybuilding in general, there's almost like a masochistic nature to it. You know, I think you almost learn to like that pain because you associate it with progress, you associate it with your drive. And I mean, you know, a lot of people who lift, we have egos and we kind of see ourselves as like, we're, you know, those people can't push themselves like we can. And I think there is like a mental side to that says like, okay, I'm strong enough to do that, and you kind of feed into that over and over, you know.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, like the entire aspect of bodybuilding is just literally all mental.
Yeah.
You have to be able to be there like mentally to be able to push hard and kind of get to where you need to be. If you're not there mentally, you're just going to go to the gym and just like half-ass your routine and just kind of done, and then that's pretty much it. But if you want to get to where you need to be and you want your legs to grow, you're going to train hard.
Yeah.
As crazy as it sounds, like I'm a strong believer of just training hard.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all these like scientific applications you can use, but if you're not like mentally there to train hard and push yourself, it's like, what are you doing?
I think you and I talked about that first time we like really talked when I was doing legs, and you had said that you're kind of, I think maybe not like annoyed, but you're kind of over some of the fitness or the evidence-based fitness industry because they don't focus enough on training hard. I think that, correct me if I'm wrong with what you said, but I believe it was like that they get so into the scientific application that they almost forget to train hard, something to that effect.
It's that was what we were talking about, but it was more of just like they focused on minor details and yet like ignore things that are actually important. Like let's say you're trying to go to the gym and like work out, and instead of like just going in there and work out, you're focusing on like, okay, am I like rested enough? Am I like doing this? Am I doing this right? Do I have to like Google this up? Do I have to apply the exact same method, exact same theory? And just fucking train. It's really not rocket science. But to a certain point, when you do like train like individuals like who are beginners, then you might apply some of that because they need the general guidance.
Yeah, sure.
But if you're someone who's been doing it for a long period of time, you can't just waste time trying to apply those scientific methods to yourself when you should be a lot more experienced to realize, okay, I just have to train harder than I did last time and then just find room to recover to be able to grow.
Right. And I think that's an important point, you know, you said, because you are a coach and I coach people as well, and when you're trying to get your clients the optimal results, you obviously want to find out what works, but that's because they might be new to you, you know, whereas like if you've been training for 10 years, you kind of have an idea. And these papers that are put out, you know, this is something I talked about on the podcast before. These papers are often short term with small sample sizes, okay? So they give us a good starting point. But if somebody has been lifting for 10 years, they probably have a better idea of what works for them than somebody else who doesn't know them, who just goes on these studies. You know, you can't just look at a study and say, well, this is what you have to do, because a lot of people don't even really, they read the abstract of the study, and they don't realize that we're looking at these averages. You're not looking at the individual data points. You know, in these studies that show high volume beats low volume, it wasn't like 100% of participants did better with high volume. You know, it's a trend that follows, and I think you have to look at that and kind of know over time what works for you. You know, obviously there's the other stereotype of people who are doing a lot of bullshit but still have good results, and they're like, well, I know what works for me, bro. It's like maybe you're just, you know, lucky and you have good genetics, which
that's definitely
both sides are there. So that's why there is a lot of nuance to it.
I think what it is that you have to be able to combine both, but apply it like in a way where it's effective towards you. Like, there's obviously some scientific application that you can use to like apply to your training, such as like in terms of like frequency. You can't be training a body part once a week and expect that to be enough to grow. Meaning the science says like twice a week is a lot more beneficial than once a week. But if you think about it from like a mathematical standpoint, training once a week, that gives you like 52 like weeks to train the exact same muscle. Where if you were to train like twice a week, you're able to hit it 104 times.
Yeah,
and that's a lot more efficient than just doing it once. Obviously, within a year, that's a long period of time.
Right.
But when you go to like 3 times a week, there is a certain diminishing return. Which, when people do full body splits,
right, and then see the I don't know, the troll in me would say, but bro, every professional bodybuilder does a body part split once a week training, which I think is in part, you know, they do have great genetics a lot of times. They are enhanced most of the time. Also, there's something to be said for like, that's how things were done. And so, you know, this is how I did it, and then they teach the next people that's how they did it. You know, something I like about Mike Israetel and that kind of camp is that despite being enhanced, they do apply the science to it. They say, yes, obviously being enhanced helps a lot. Obviously we can still grow doing slightly less optimal things, but I still believe XYZ is optimal based on the studies. You know, do I think going to 2 times a week instead of 1 time a week is going to get you twice the gains? No. But I don't know, maybe 10, 20% more progress than you would have seen otherwise, which over the years can add up and get you maybe to wherever you're going to be faster, you know?
I think what is that also, protein synthesis is also one of the reasons why training twice a week might be a lot more efficient. Where if you're just training once, your recovery is like every 7 days, and there's this protein synthesis return eventually isn't there.
Sure.
Where if you do it like more frequently, it's always like constantly like active.
Right. Which, you know, again, and you know, steroids do also increase the length of time that protein synthesis is going on. Yeah. You know, so that could be one reason why they can get away with that, is because maybe, you know, an advanced natural trainee, it might last 2 days after you've worked out. If you're enhanced, it might be 4 or 5 days, just for an example.
Yeah.
Something I wanted to ask you is, when talking to Eric Helms in the past, one of the reasons that he said that he wouldn't go that route with being enhanced is because he is very competitive, and he knows that for himself, once he started that, he'd want to keep going up and winning, and he might not be able to stop himself. So going into it, do you have any kind of mental like limits of like, I'm not going to go past XYZ because, like, you know, for health reasons or whatever, that you're going to kind of cut yourself off at a certain point? Or is it kind of open at this point?
So I think my body just decides that. Yeah. Because every time I break 200, I get sick and I lose like 10 pounds.
Right.
So I'm pretty comfortable at 190 to maybe like high, like close to 200.
Okay.
But I don't ever feel the need to be over like 210, like 225, 230, or all that ridiculous number, because I just feel so much more comfortable being at the weight that I'm at, and just gradually like slowly add in muscle as I go throughout the years. I mean, it will take a long period of time.
Sure.
I'm okay with that, but like, when, not to like boost my ego, but when I see certain individuals in terms of like the shape, the symmetry, and it's like overall like the way my body is shaped, I look a lot bigger than most people who way more than me.
Right.
So with that in mind, I just feel like there's no reason for me to like continuously like up the dose as I go.
Right.
And I can just like find a healthy range that I can use and eventually just focus on food and training.
Yeah.
And then just gradually over time, if anything is off, I'm not going to be like, all right, time to up the dose, guys.
Right.
But I could just figure out, okay, I'm not eating enough calories.
Mm-hmm.
What do I need to do? Add more calories. I'm not training as much as I want to. What do I need to do? Just like fix my training, like fix little things here and there, increase more volume, increase more frequency, and all that stuff.
Right.
Inevitably, once that's all reached, I can, maybe up something in terms of like enhancement.
Right.
But that's the last thing I try to do.
Yeah, which is, I think, a good mindset. And, I'm glad you kind of pointed out it's not just the size, it's like the shape and everything. Because somebody had mentioned, I had this guy, Eric Lee Salazar, on my podcast a couple podcasts ago. And he's a natural competitor. He competed at, I think, like 145. And he's, I think, maybe your height. And somebody in the comments was saying, well, he's not, how can you guys say he has great genetics? He's 145 pounds. And like, that's not that big. And I'm like, yeah, but dude, look at him. He looks crazy. He looks awesome. And part of that isn't just his weight. I know people who are under 45 pounds, even when very lean, and they don't look anything like that. He's got the flow to it. And you have a very tiny waist. You have broad shoulders. You have like these like balloon muscles. And that for bodybuilding, maybe, because when we talk about good genetics, this is actually something I don't talk about on air as much, but I've talked with friends about, is like, people talk about, oh, this person has great genetics. Well, that's because we're talking about the bodybuilding sense, but it's like great genetics for what? Maybe you at 5'7", maybe you don't have the best genetics for basketball or something.
Exactly.
Maybe somebody say, wow, you have shit genetics, but it's like in this realm, all of those features are perfect genetics for bodybuilding. For me, I'm 6'1", but I have like a 6'4" arm span. I have long limbs. And so for athletics, that was good, and I was a pretty good athlete. But for bodybuilding, it kind of sucks. I have, when my quads were at their biggest, they measured 27 inches around. I had a friend whose were 25. And if we stood next to each other, his quads blew mine away. Like, I was like, this is bullshit. But it's just, but that was the hands that we were dealt. And so I was a lot stronger than him. Maybe for powerlifting, I'd be better. But for him, bodybuilding. And so obviously when we're talking about good genetics, it's to the context that we're discussing.
Yeah, it's mainly just like your muscle insertions, how fast your metabolism can be to like react to food, how quick you respond to lifting weights. Some people can like just look at weights and just grow, which is ridiculous. I hate people like that, Philly. But it's mainly just like, basically it's stuff that are given to you by your parents, and you just have to make the best use out of it. Like, it might not be the same as somebody else, but what you can do is just make the best out of what you have.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, it's like you're not going to look the same as somebody else because your muscle insertions are just completely like off, like too short muscle bellies, too long muscle bellies, and all that stuff. Metabolism are not as fast. And the one thing I've noticed about like most bodybuilders at the top tier level is like they have crazy, insane metabolism. So like that way they can like utilize food a lot more efficiently than somebody else who's just like really slow. So it takes a while to like build all that muscle mass. But they can eat a lot of food, still look lean. And then with the muscle insertions and everything like that, they look ridiculously big even though they don't weigh that much.
Right. Yeah, and lifting is a little bit different than other sports because I would say that, if after a couple of years you realize you don't have the talent or the genetics for a certain sport, whether it be tennis, basketball, whatever, for those people I'd probably say, hey, like maybe do something else that you can be better at. But with lifting, maybe I'd say don't compete in bodybuilding if you don't have the best genetics, but everybody should be lifting. And I think that's one of the big differences is the majority of people listening to this podcast probably don't have amazing genetics. Obviously just by virtue of being amazing genetics, it's a rare thing. But everybody should continue to be lifting. And I think, you coach people, so I'm sure you see from pretty poor genetics up into more genetically elite. How do you coach people differently? I'm sure after a certain period of time coaching them, you kind of get a sense of like, this person has it, this person doesn't. Do you change your approach to how you coach those people?
Yeah, typically when it comes to like, let's say they have like a lag in body parts and stuff like that, I'll just have them hit it more frequently. I actually have a guy who's on gear, and I watched him progress for like 2 to 3 months, and not to call him out, but like I can see like he's not as responsive towards using gear. So what we have to do is just focus more on training. Most people at that point, just to make up for the fact that they're not as responsive, will just be like, all right, man, time to up the dose.
Yeah, right.
But with him, I'm just like, okay, all right, dude, listen. So I need you to focus more on like how you execute like your exercises. Like again, train more frequently. Make sure to watch. He's very sensitive to fats.
Okay.
So like if you give him like high fats, he will blow up ridiculously. But then if you like give him like really really low fats, he's just not look anything really what he should look like.
Yeah. Huh.
But yeah, I think with him, I usually have to go to the gym with him because he lives close by.
Okay.
And kind of see like how he actually performs his exercises. So him, I try to be more hands-on and have him focus more on the technique, the form, and also progression, because that is really important. Because I think before, when I wasn't like monitoring him in person, he wasn't really applying the right progressive overload.
Really?
So
Okay.
it would, like, even though I have like the program and I sent it to him, he would probably just like do like a heavy amount of weight, ridiculous amount of weight,
Yeah.
with horrible form, horrible execution, and he's just not feeling like the muscle that he should. So with people like that, it's a lot more than just like, hey man, just up the dose. There's a lot more like stuff that goes into it, like trying to figure out like what they're doing that's making them not grow as much as they could. Like how much calories are they taking within the day? Do I up their calories? Do I change, like, are they more sensitive to carbs, less sensitive to carbs, fats, etc.? And in terms of training, again, it's literally like, it sounds silly, but if you start executing your exercises and like your workouts the right way, it's like magic. It literally is.
I think it's you know, earlier I kind of made the joke of like, you get some of these genetic freaks and they're like, well, it works for me, bro. And those people I actually do think like maybe you shouldn't listen to. But what I think, it's just because somebody has good genetics doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to them. And I think it's important though that they've worked with a span of people, and that's why I think, like, you know, I would say you pretty clearly have better bodybuilding genetics than I do, but we've both worked with a lot of people at this point, and so we've gotten to see, you know, bottom of the barrel to like the genetic elite. I think when you have the coaches of the pros, it can be skewed because they are almost exclusively dealing with complete freaks.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, even though you're doing well now yourself, you do have this range of clients, and that's when I think people can really get a lot of information, because they realize, especially if you're going to the gym with them, you can see, like, I know how this person's training now. I know that they're taking stuff, and I realize that they're just not getting the results I would have expected.
That's actually what was frustrating about it. I was like, okay, I got this results from just doing
Right.
so amount, but then they're not. Like, what are they doing wrong?
Right. Which, and it's good, because, like, I think we can both kind of admit that. Like, if you were just kind of in your own echo chamber and it was just you and maybe like a couple people with great genetics as well, you might think, hey, if you're not looking like me, I mean, it's different now with the internet because everybody kind of sees so much, but like, you know, I hear people who were like lifting in like the early 90s and stuff where this was more the case, but you might think you're clearly doing something wrong because you might just not understand it. And I said the same thing about myself. If I blew up within the first few years of lifting, if I just had like crazy genetics, I probably would have been that douchebag that was like, you guys just don't work as hard as me. I would have been that guy, you know, because I would have thought, because I was working hard.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was working hard and not getting the results that I realized, oh, it's not just about hard work.
Yeah.
You know, I had that happen with me in school even, where like, you know, I worked hard, but I did very, very well whenever I wanted to. So I just thought, like, anybody can do this well. And the reality is, like, not everybody can. You know, it's not. This doesn't just apply to muscle growth. This applies to athletics. This applies to intelligence. This applies to a lot of things in life. And I think it's healthy to understand that, like, in most areas, most people can improve, but not everyone can do everything, despite, you know, what our parents told us when we were 5 years old.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's essentially it in a way. And you just have to, like, find things to, like, work around certain things. For, like, example, back to genetics, if somebody who's competing for bodybuilding and they always complain, like, oh, my waist is too big. With people like that, if you're coaching them, you just have to be able to hit their delts a lot more so they can kind of get a lot bigger,
Right.
increase their chest size, and then that kind of gives that illusion of just like a smaller waist, and then their back, get that V taper really, really wide.
Right.
So eventually that like big waist ends up becoming so much smaller
Relatively,
because you
yeah.
have everything else like a lot bigger than your waist. I mean, that's one way to go on about certain things like that, where with people who just have like tiny, small waists,
Lucky. Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
It's like literally everything just comes down to them so easily. Like they just don't know how to like properly some may not know how to train because they can get away with it. And
Right.
that's one of the things I've noticed with growing up and like training the way that I did is that certain things come a lot quicker. But compared to like me to Phil Heath, certain things comes a lot quicker to Phil Heath. And I'm just
there's levels.
Oh, damn, so now I got to work a lot harder than that.
Yeah, there's definitely levels to it. I'm just curious, do you know what your waistline measures?
Usually during prep, about 26, 27.
What the fuck?
Like,
Are you kidding? Like at the nape, like belly button?
Yeah, it's like around
What?
27 to 28, roughly.
Dude, that's nuts, man. No, because I could tell, I wasn't sure how much of your, if it was mostly an illusion, because you're very wide as well. But that's nuts. I mean, when I'm at my leanest, I get to like maybe 31, like my absolute like leanest. Right now I'm sitting at like 33. But like to compete at, I mean, my one friend, he's like 6'3", he's just this giant dude. And he doesn't look fat, but he'll literally have like a 38-inch waist, and it's just like, he's quite wide, so it actually looks okay. Yeah. But dude, 27 inches, that's absurd. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think the last time that I prepped, I like did that, and it was just like, okay, this is really, really tiny. I have like a picture on Instagram where it's just like, it's just so ridiculously small. It's like, what the hell?
Damn, dude. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And
girls hate me.
right. So getting towards the end here. So what's like on the future for you? You know, I know you're coaching. You said you want to kind of expand your coaching in terms of coaching and competing. What are you looking at? So
right now, I want to focus more on like the business aspect of things. So getting more online clients, and also I work at a gym as a personal trainer, so getting more clients to that. I want to strictly just focus on coaching. I've actually been making a lot more YouTube videos and trying to get those out as much as I can, so that way I can give like information to people, or not like the scientific aspect, but at least try to like combine both like the science and the bro science, because that's also one thing a lot of people don't necessarily do, is like it's either you're a science individual or you're totally full bro. Yeah, but if you like combined everything at once and kind of like figure out like what's effective, what's not, what's like what you can use, it'll be really helpful. So that's what I'm trying to base my channel on, is being able to combine both like the scientific aspect of bodybuilding and also the bro science aspect, just bring them all together, and then that way like it makes it easier for people to understand, and just like, why is he using big words, but he sounds really smart, so I'll just follow him. Yeah, right. So what's the name of the YouTube channel and your Instagram? So my Instagram is Can You Lift, and my YouTube channel is Can You Fitness. Can you dig it? It's so creative. Awesome. So, and we'll put the links there. So thanks for talking, man. Yeah, you're welcome.